You're not going to believe this, but what if you could get a former flagship graphics card, a real monster from over a decade ago, for an absolutely ridiculous price? Today, we're looking at a piece of tech that honestly seems way too good to be true. And when I say ridiculous, I mean it. We're talking 30 pounds. 30! For a GPU that was once the absolute peak of PC gaming. That's less than a decent takeaway for two people. It's wild. So, the big question is, could this 11-year-old card, the AMD R9 Fury, actually be all you need for a really solid 1080p gaming setup today in 2026? Well, let's dive in and find out. Now, before we plug this thing in and see what it can do, you gotta understand its backstory, because its history is, well, it's pretty unique. It's really the story of an innovative card that was, by all accounts, a failure. See, when this thing first launched, way back in 2015, it got a bit of a bad rap. It was a seriously powerful card, for sure, but it had this crazy high price tag, so gamers pretty much ignored it, sales were terrible, and a lot of people just wrote it off as a total flop. But here's where it gets interesting. This card had a secret weapon. It was one of the very first to use something called high bandwidth memory. And just look at that memory bus, a 4096-bit bus. That number is absolutely colossal, even by today's standards. And that is the key to why this card might still be a beast today. Okay, let's look at the tail of the tape here. You can see its DNA, that GCN3 architecture, the 3584 cores. That's not too far off from the much later Vega 56. But the things that really matter are that 4 gigs of HBM1 and, yep, there it is again, that massive memory bus. This combo is what lets it punch way, way above its weight, especially with modern APIs like DirectX 12. All right, enough history. Time for the fun part. Let's put this old timer to the test. We're going to throw some of the most popular, most demanding games of 2026 at it and see if it can keep up, or if it just crumbles. And we're not pulling any punches. We're starting with an absolute beast of a game. Cyberpunk 2077 is notorious for bringing even modern systems to their knees, so it's a real trial by fire for a card this old. And wow, the results are genuinely shocking. At 1080p on the high preset, it's averaging 36 frames per second. If you just lock that to 30 FPS, what you get is a totally smooth console-like experience. For a 30-pound card, that is absolutely incredible. Okay, next up, something completely different. Counter-Strike 2. This isn't about beautiful graphics. This is about pure, twitchy, high frame rate performance for that competitive edge. 201 frames per second, on average. I mean, come on, that is just raw power. It's not just playable, that is legitimately competitive. You could pair this 30-quid card with a high refresh rate monitor and be totally set. Seriously, seriously impressive. All right, what about one of the biggest games of all time? Grand Theft Auto V's Enhanced Edition is still a go-to benchmark for a lot of people. So how does our old R9 Fury handle Los Santos? Oh, it handles it like an absolute champ. At 1080p on very high settings, we're cruising at an average of 76 FPS. But check this out, and this goes right back to that insane memory bus we talked about. If you bump the resolution up to 1440p, the frame rate barely even moves. That HBM is just flexing its muscles. It's phenomenal. And the good news just keeps on rolling in. Fortnite, over 100 FPS. The absolutely gorgeous Red Dead Redemption 2, a solid 61 FPS on average. Fallout 4 on ultra settings is a locked 60. You know, the only real snag we hit was Baldur's Gate 3, and even that's playable. The stutters seem to be more of a driver thing, not a lack of raw power. Okay. This all seems a little too good to be true, doesn't it? All this performance for just 30 quid. Well, you knew there had to be a catch. And there is. Out of the box, this thing is thirsty. Very, very thirsty for power. Just look at that difference. Straight out of the box, while gaming, this card is pulling almost 260 watts. It runs hot, it runs loud, and it's just wildly inefficient. But with one simple tweak, we can bring that all the way down to 171 watts. The fix is a process called undervolting, and it slashes power consumption by a massive 87 watts. That's a huge deal. It means the card runs way cooler, the fans don't have to scream their heads off, and here's the kicker, the performance actually gets more stable. It's a win-win-win. And don't worry, this isn't some super complex, expert-level overclocking trick. It's literally a few clicks in the standard AMD driver software. You just go to the tuning section, bump the power limit up for a bit of headroom, and then copy the voltage from a lower power state over to the higher ones, click apply, and you're done. It's that easy. All right, so we've seen the rocky history, we've seen the shocking performance, and we've seen the one big flaw that has a really simple fix. So it's time to bring it all home and answer that first big question. When you put it all on the table, the picture is crystal clear. You look at its main rivals in the budget space, cards like the RX 580 or the GTX 1060, and they often sell for double the price. Yet the R9 Fury consistently hangs with them, and in many cases outright beats them, especially if you start pushing to 1440p. So, the final verdict is in. For £30, the AMD R9 Fury isn't just a good deal, it is an unbelievably good deal. You are getting genuine quality performance for a fantastic 1080p or even a 1440p gaming experience. It is, without a doubt, one of the best value propositions in PC gaming today, period. And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. If a card that was labeled a commercial failure over a decade ago can still deliver this kind of amazing performance for just £30, what does that really say about the hundreds or even thousands of pounds we're being asked to pay for new graphics cards today? It really makes you wonder.